Check out how you can get those solar panels installed at your home or residence by going to onesolarsolution.com. Bringing you the world news coming up next. This is Radio Caravan, the world news read by Shabnam Modgil. As many as 50,000 airline workers could be furloughed starting this morning after Congress failed to pass a last-minute deal to extend coronavirus relief aid to the embattled industry. American Airlines CEO Doug Parker confirmed late last night that his airline would go ahead with 19,000 layoffs, or 14% of its pre-pandemic workforce, but said it would reverse them if an agreement were reached. The terms of billions in federal airline aid expired early this morning, setting the stage for more than thousands of job cuts. And airline executives, including the CEOs of American, United, Southwest and JetBlue, have been making last-ditch attempts in Washington since yesterday to persuade lawmakers and Trump officials to provide additional aid as the job cuts are set to begin this morning. Talks progressed in recent days, but House Speaker Nancy Pelosi yesterday said she and Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin failed to reach a deal on the relief package after a 90-minute meeting, despite optimism earlier in the day. The U.S. Senate, meanwhile, approved a temporary funding bill to keep the government open through the 11th of December, sending the measure to President Trump for signing into law. Government funding runs out at midnight, and the legislation, which had previously passed the House of Representatives and passed the Senate on a vote of 84-10, continues funding most programs at current levels. The group that manages presidential election debates said it would take steps to bring order to the final two contests between President Trump and Democrat Joe Biden following widespread criticism of their first encounter. The 90-minute debate was chaotic, marred by the Republican president's constant interjections and interruptions of both his Democratic rival and the host, as well as Biden's angry rejoinders. The Commission on Presidential Debates, a non-partisan group that has organized these events since 1988, said it would make unspecified changes to the format to prevent chaos and maybe cutting off the microphone of the person who's not supposed to be speaking. President Trump scrambled to quell an uproar over his failure to explicitly denounce white supremacist groups during his debate debacle with Joe Biden, who branded his election campaign a national embarrassment. President Trump tried to walk back his refusal to outright condemn a far-right fascist group during his debate with Democrat Joe Biden, but the inflammatory moment was far from the first time the president has failed to denounce white supremacists or has advanced racist ideas. His initial refusal to criticize the Proud Boys, instead of saying the group should stand back and stand by, drew fierce blowback before he altered his message in a day later effort to quell the firestorm. And a member of the right-wing hate group Proud Boys was arrested in Oregon yesterday after the first presidential debate in which President Trump declined to disavow white supremacy for assault and weapons charges resulting from a confrontation he had with protesters in August. He returned to the campaign trail in Minnesota yesterday and immediately went to the attack, making some unsubstantiated and racist claims about the state's Somalia-born Congresswoman Ilhan Omar, whom he said had harvested mail-in ballots entirely without evidence. And they've been fighting in Wisconsin and Pennsylvania over the cutoff date for counting mailed ballots, and in North Carolina over witness requirements. Ohio is grappling with drop boxes for ballots as Texas faces a court challenge over extra days of early voting. More than 50 Republican former national security officials will endorse Democratic presidential candidate Joe Biden today, joining one of several Republican organizations opposing the re-election of President Trump. The coronavirus tightened its grip on the American heartland, with infections surging in the Midwest. Some hospitals in Wisconsin and North Dakota running low on space, and the NFL postponing a game over an outbreak that's hit the Tennessee Titans football team. A wave of 4 small earthquakes rattled Northern California, leaving residents concerned a much larger one might be on its way. California Governor Gavin Newsom, meanwhile, signed legislation yesterday creating a task force to study the issue of reparations for black Americans. California is the first state in the nation to consider reparations for those harmed by slavery and racial discrimination. The Trump administration has proposed further slashing the number of refugees the United States accepts to a new record low in the coming year. and hundreds of migrants began walking last night from a city in northern Honduras towards the Guatemala border, testing a well-trod migration route now in times of the novel coronavirus. And after years of pursuing a trio of former Venezuelan officials in major drug trafficking cases, the U.S. government is offering tens of millions of dollars in rewards for information leading to the arrests of these 3 ex-Venezuelan officials accused in Miami federal court of exporting cocaine from Colombia. It sounds totally insane, but the ongoing session of the UN General Assembly is about to elect Cuba, Russia, and China to the UN Human Rights Council. Just as crazy, the Council is expected to keep Venezuela as one of its 47 member countries, despite the recent devastating findings by UN entities accusing President Nicolas Maduro's dictatorship of being responsible for thousands of state-sponsored killings and the systematic torture of political prisoners. The Vatican has denied the U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo's request for an audience with Pope Francis this week, saying the Pope would not see Pompeo in the midst of the ongoing American election. And the body of Kuwait's Emir, Sheikh Sabah Al-Ahmed Al-Sabah, arrived in Kuwait from the United States, where he was receiving medical treatment. The government quickly named his half-brother, 83-year-old Crown Prince Sheikh Nawaf Al-Ahmed Al-Sabah, as his successor. U.S. Defense Secretary Mark Esper met with Tunisia's president, kicking off a North African tour amid growing concern about lawlessness in Libya. And Nigeria, Africa's most populous nation, marking 60 years of independence from the United Kingdom today. The Afghan government and Taliban negotiators are nearing a compromise on a key sticking point that has stalled peace talks in Doha. And at least 6 missiles targeting Erbil International Airport in northern Iraq were intercepted last night, as diplomatic tensions between Washington and Baghdad mounted over a spate of rocket attacks targeting the U.S. presence. Turkey and Iran are increasingly adopting game-changing drones as their weapon of choice against Kurdish rebels in northern Iraq, prompting fears for the safety of civilians and stoking geopolitical tensions. Turkey's state-controlled missile maker Roketsan has set out on an ambitious program to produce the country's first surface-to-surface laser-guided missile. And Greece looks for European Union support this week in tough upcoming talks with Turkey after securing a diplomatic boost from visiting U.S. Secretary of State. French President Emmanuel Macron has expressed concern about Turkey allegedly sending Syrian mercenaries to support Azerbaijan in its reignited conflict with Armenia over the mountainous region that they are fighting over. And Serena Williams suffered another blow in her bid for a 24th Grand Slam title as the American withdrew from the French Open with an ankle injury, while 12-time champion Rafael Nadal raced into the third round. And Germany has issued coronavirus warnings for Belgium and much of France, while a study showed the prevalence of infections in England is much higher than the end of August, but there are signs that the growth in infection rate is slowing. The European Union launched legal action against the UK over London's plan to unilaterally breach a Brexit withdrawal agreement, as both sides had signed that last year. The European Commission will today send a letter of formal notice to the UK for breaching the terms of the withdrawal agreement, and the letter is the first step to a legal process that could result in a lawsuit at the European Court of Justice. Asylum seekers who enter the UK from Europe face being rejected after Brexit under a shake-up planned by Preeti Patel, the Home Secretary, proposing legal changes that would mean asylum claims by migrants who come through the European Union and enter the UK legally will be deemed inadmissible. You're listening to the World News on Radio Caravan, and Germany lifted its blanket warning against traveling to all countries outside the European Union early this morning. Kremlin critic Alexei Navalny told a German magazine he believed Russian President Putin was behind his suspected poisoning, but said he was not afraid and would return to Russia to resume campaigning. Portuguese leaders have criticized U.S. Ambassador George Glass after he said they must choose between the United States and China or risk the consequences. European Union leaders will call on China to finalize a stalled investment agreement by the end of the year and again criticize Beijing over its security crackdown in Hong Kong. Riot police flooded Hong Kong's streets on a tense National Day, a show of force intended to back up leader Carrie Lam's morning declaration that stability had returned to the Asian financial center. And after being temporarily banned by the Hong Kong government in the second half of September, Air India will fly to Hong Kong from New Delhi this weekend. Mumbai Indians captain Rohit Sharma inches away from joining an elite list when they take on Kings 11 Punjab in match 13 of the IPL in Abu Dhabi today. And it is Rahul, KL Rahul, who has won the toss and opted to field. A custom-made B-777 aircraft, which will be used to fly the President, Vice President and Prime Minister, has arrived in Delhi from Texas. We do have Rahul Gandhi, his sister Priyanka, who've been released a little while ago after they were detained by the Uttar Pradesh police this morning near the Yamuna Expressway, when the duo, after being stopped on the highway, decided to march to Hathras to meet the family of Uttar Pradesh woman who was gang raped and died in a Delhi hospital earlier this week. And the National Commission for Women has written to the Director General of Police in Uttar Pradesh seeking an explanation for the midnight cremation of the gang rape victim's body in the absence of her family. India's COVID-19 caseload breaching the 63 lakh mark this morning, and last month proved to be the worst month in terms of COVID-19 cases for Maharashtra. Prime Minister Imran Khan's speech at the UN General Assembly is the most watched video among world leaders on the UN's YouTube page. Coming in second is President Trump. Prime Minister Imran Khan's move to convert Gilgit-Baltistan in the occupied northern area into Pakistan's fifth province at China's behest has provoked a pushback within the country. And it is the Islamabad High Court lashing out at former Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif and the federal government over his prolonged absence. And the government in Islamabad designated Vice Admiral Amjad Khan Niazi as the next chief of the naval staff. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is all that I have in the news for you on this first day of October.